Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns continue to get ready for the Jaguars Sunday down in Jacksonville. And there just continues to be more news legally. Tony Busby, the attorney, tells Mike Florio's Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, that the NFL will interview his client in 2 weeks and that they have pertinent video that will be shared with the league as well. So we will continue to monitor that, and Mary Kay Cabot tweets that out. Back onto the fields, Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, talking about what expectations for Deshaun Watson should be in Week 2. This is from ESPN Cleveland.
What are you expecting from him Sunday?
Well, I'm expecting him to be better, but whereas the other 52 have to be better too. And that's why they can make up a lot of ground, because each position group on that field that played poorly, and everyone did, if they all correct their mistakes, that's a quantum improvement as a team. And we saw it last year when they won games with Watson not playing. The rest of the team won the game. It wasn't the quarterbacks who were winning, So that's why I think, we put too much emphasis on Watson. He's one of 52 guys. He's one of 11 on that offense. He's the main guy, I know. But the rest of the team is so much better than it played Sunday.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. There was plenty of blame to go around. I think the reason Watson's getting a lot of it, at least in my mind, they were supposed to design an offense around him, and I have no idea what they were trying to do with that offense. Was it Stefanski's? Was it Dorsey's? It didn't work, whatever it was.
Yeah, there's failure on multiple fronts, and a lot of it is, you see the TV copy, and from the TV copy, you just see Watson struggling, but when you see the All-22, you see a ton of struggle to go around, and I'm with you. You had all offseason to devise an offense, and then you get it all packaged up, and it was nowhere near ready for game one. That's just disheartening, because you revamped everything to be better for this one player, and there clearly was a disconnect. The offensive line couldn't pass block. They were decent at run blocking, but you couldn't stay up with the sticks to stay with your run game, and then you're behind on the scoreboard, and the running game goes out the window. And the times when Watson actually delivered the ball, receivers were dropping them. So it was failure to launch on all fronts. But when you're the quarterback, you're going to catch the brunt. So he wasn't good. He needs to be better, and if he's not better, it's going to be hard for this team to win.
Well, the other thing was Browns 11 penalties for 64 yards. Cowboys also had 11 penalties. A lot of the Browns were pre-snap. Joe Bitonio, offensive lineman, offensive coordinator. Ken Dorsey asked about those penalties.
I think it's very correctable. That was frustrating because you don't want to put yourself behind the chain, especially a team like Dallas. Like 1st and 15, 2nd and 15 are just not the positions you want to be in. We had and those are correctable. Snap count, alignment issues, all types of things like that, formations. You could fix those things, and that's been a huge emphasis. It's always an emphasis, but when you have 5 of them, you want to try and correct those. And if we can stay in front of the sticks and have 3rd and 5 instead of 3rd and 12, you have a lot better chance to convert those.
I mean, obviously, I think penalties make it hard to play any type of offense at the end of the day. So I think we want to make sure we are going out and doing all the things that we need to do from a technique standpoint to just being locked in mental standpoint, whether it's, we're trying to use tempo, we're huddling, it's 3rd down, it's red zone, it's short yardage, right? Whatever the situation is, all those things, we got to make sure we're locked in.
And Casey, it leads to the question, would you have been better off playing some of the starters in the preseason? Mm-hmm. Once you come out and play like that in the first regular season game, you got to look at everything.
Yeah, nothing's out of bounds after you put on a performance like that. And I think it's safe to say that one of the reasons we're disappointed is that is the sloppiest we've ever seen a Kevin Stefanski-led team. And right out the gate, like Joel said, it's always an emphasis, but then when something like that happens, you drill an extra on it. So did these guys just not get enough time together in the preseason and work all these things out? And it also sloppy, like operationally. You got to think, we talked about all offseason. What do we need to see more of? Well, we need to see motion. Well, when you're not breaking the huddle until 4 seconds on the play clock's remaining, you don't even have time to think about motion. It's about just snapping the ball, and it just let everything look clunky and disjointed. And it's just disheartening for fans to think you had all this time to prepare, and you looked very unprepared when it came down to it.
All right, because we are the shining light and rose-colored glasses kind of people, there is this note. Kevin Stefanski has never started a season 0-2 since he's been the head coach of the Browns. That's all I got. That's about all I got for the bright spot.
Well, it also goes to show, like, he hasn't had that many losing streaks in his 5 years here, And 2020, they didn't lose back-to-back games, and then in 22, I believe it happened twice, and 21 it happened twice, and last year it happened more than once where they went on losing streaks. It's because they compartmentalize, you know what I mean? Because you cannot allow what happened on Sunday to beat you in Jacksonville. You have to be able to kind of keep it on the rails and just keep it about what this week's about. That's only the way you kind of climb out of those holes and don't allow those losses to stack. Because you got to think about it, man, you're in the AFC. There are a ton of teams with legitimate playoff aspirations. You cannot go 0-2. And if you're going to lay an egg, it's best to do it out of conference. This week, this AFC team you're playing, they're playing for the same things you're playing for. They have the same playoff aspirations you do. You cannot afford to go 0-2, and you definitely can't afford a loss to someone who could own a tiebreaker over you once it comes to the end of December.
So this is from the 33rd team. Which teams should be most worried after week 1? So 33rd team, those are NFL executives and all those. They go Ravens, Bengals, Browns. So 3 of the teams in the AFC North that lost, along with the Falcons and the Packers. They say Myles Garrett's defensive cohorts need more help from the offense. They also didn't get it in the 45-14 wild card loss last season in Houston when Joe Flacco threw 2 pick sixes. The defense also gave up 3 touchdown passes to C.J. Stroud in that resounding defeat. You can't turn the ball over with a good defense. They turned the ball over twice again, and they gave up a punt return for a touchdown. Those are things that will kill a dominant defense.
Yeah, they'll kill a dominant defense, and then when you're an offense with all the pre-snap penalties and you're constantly behind the sticks, and you can't afford to not be in 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, like you just don't ever get to that, and you can't stay on the field and stack drives. You end up going 5 3-and-outs in the first half. The defense was on the field for 19 minutes and 56 seconds in that first half. Like, it's awfully hard to hold that many times against a good offense like Dallas. So there's a lot of concern to go around. Defensively, I wasn't super happy with the effort early on, but those are all correctable things that the defense went through. The offense has a ton of work to put in. And unfortunately, I don't think it's like hitting a switch and everything's all good. I think for the first month of the season, that defense is going to have to do all the heavy lifting. And if the offense can give you 18 to 20 points, you got to turn in those kind of efforts to kind of squeak out these victories while the offense finds itself. What I will say is, of all those teams they listed, I think the Bengals need to be discussed as well. You're talking about a team who lost to a New England Patriots team at home. I feel like the New England Patriots should probably be, fighting for that first overall pick. For them to go into Cincinnati and get a win. There's other teams with questions. I think if you were to match up the Cowboys versus the Patriots, that'd be a pretty ugly game. You didn't lose to the same caliber of opponents. It doesn't lessen the concern, but just understand it isn't just happening here in Cleveland. There are other teams throughout the league who laid an egg in the first week, and it doesn't doom you for the season.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
When Baker was traded, he put out a statement, now the leash has been taken off. I assume he meant Coach Stefanski was holding him back. By no means am I advocating for Baker, but he has been playing better. Of course, it helps that he's in the worst division of football as opposed to the best division. I digress. Is Stefanski holding back Deshaun, telling him just don't turn the ball over? Is Stefanski coaching not to lose? He certainly let Flacco throw it around, interceptions or not. I say take off the leash and let Deshaun let it rip now that we have some weapons and a wide receiver group that's getting separation. What do we have to lose after last week's performance? Might just get the offense we hope for. Thanks, guys.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I don't know that he's telling Deshaun not to turn it over. If he is, he didn't listen because he did throw a couple of interceptions. The concerning part is his accuracy. I mean, he was missing guys by a lot. That's concerning.
Yeah, especially on throws where he has to push it. You can see that that's not hitting them in the right spots where they could even get yards after the catch if they were to catch it. So it's concerning. I don't see it being a leash kind of concern to me though. I see plenty of guys open. He's just not seeing. For me, I think he was shell shocked. I think the first quarter, the pass rush was getting there so quick that he abandoned any hope of processing. You see it several times in the second quarter and on, where he'd get to the back step of his drop, and immediately his eyes come down because he's worried about all the traffic around him. And that caused him to bail clean pockets and miss wide open guys. So I just think it's a time on task thing. And I know I'm not saying this is easy by any stretch, but you're going to have to stand and deliver. You're going to have to take some shots. You're going to have to keep your eyes up the field and make plays. Because when we talk about everything that made him special in Houston, that's what it was. That wasn't a good offensive line in Houston, but he was always able to kind of calibrate and keep his eyes up and find the open guys and make those big plays. But when you're so worried about the rush, your eyes just drop. No good will come of it after that.
Yeah, the other thing is at some point in time you got to do some sort of screen game or quick, where and I don't mean like 5-yard quick. I mean like rush is coming, turn around at the line of scrimmage and get the ball over the guys that are chasing you quick. All right, before we go to break, a couple of news and notes from Browns practice. Jedrick Wills returned to practice today. That in no way indicates that he will be ready to be ready for the game, but he was back on the practice field. And then rookie cornerback Miles Harden, shin injury on injured reserve, so he's out for at least 4 games. They signed a linebacker, Michael Barrett, to the practice squad. Harden's the 5th defender that has been put on IR, so that is the numbers are thinning. That's concerning as well.
Yeah, and if you think of all the attrition they went through offensively last year with the injuries, and it seems like it's just shifted over to the other side of the ball this year. It's so unfortunate. Luckily, the IR rules change. You can bring more players back. So hopefully these aren't long-term issues. And these are something where these players can heal in 3 or so weeks, and then by that 4th week actually be ready to return and contribute. The Jed Wills thing, for me, it's about stacking days now. We saw he got out there one day last week, didn't practice the second day. Stefanski said he was going to be out there yesterday and logged a DNP, was out there today. So now it's about stacking some days and getting healthy enough. So I feel like he's probably still in the ramp up period of his rehab, but it is, it's at least encouraging that he's returning back to the field. We just need to see it more now.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Barking Browns podcast and the Orange and Brown Report. So let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon. I have a couple different takes on the Deshaun Watson situation. First, with the allegations against him, I just don't know how, nobody knows for sure really what happens. It just, to me, when you have 25 or 6 different cases against him, yeah, that's awful condemning, but it's the same lawyer. And surprise, all the plaintiffs have the same story. I don't know how to feel about that. Secondly, I don't think that Deshaun Watson was an Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski pick. I think that was something that Jimmy Haslam forced on them. I mean, they're not going to say that, but that's just personally how I feel. You'll have a wonderful day. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I get both points, and we're never going to know. They're never going to reveal who wanted Deshaun Watson, who decided, who made the ultimate thing. I can understand that line of thinking, though.
Yeah, and it's just conjecture. You can feel like maybe it was a Jimmy decision, but like it's just going to be us guessing because no one's ever going to come out and say it. Maybe there's an ESPN 30 for 30 10 years from now, and we'll get the answers. But you have to understand the reasons why. If you're coming off an off season, you're actually watching the Buffalo Bills leave 13 seconds on a play clock on the clock, and the Chiefs go down the field, and it feels like you're in the AFC. If you don't have a guy, it's going to be hopeless. So you start to speculate like, well, what do we got to do to get a guy? And then someone actually becomes available. And and the Browns were not alone in this. There were several teams bidding for these services, and you just happened to be the guy that ended up with them. So you get the methodology, you get what you were trying to do. Now, you didn't know, obviously no one knew that he was going to be this version of himself when he finally got him on the field. And it's played out very unfortunately, but you have to understand why you would make a move to do something like that. And even if this doesn't work and they have to scrap it and they have to eat money to get out of a contract and all the negative stuff that'll come with that, you still have to find a guy. And they don't come available like that. So I understand why they did it. It's just unfortunate that it hasn't worked up until this point.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm glad they did it. Results aren't looking too good right about now, though. All right, this is for me and Hart. It's really interesting. Offenses that used way less play action in Week 1 than they did in 2023. Top one, the Falcons, minus 30%. Titans, minus 16%. Bucks and Raiders, minus 12%. And the Browns, minus 11%. And again, that's kind of an indication that they may be going to a different offense. But again, it was all over the place. I defy somebody to watch that and tell me exactly what they were trying to do.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge of things, and they're still trying to find their way through. And for me, that's a lot of this stuff should have been worked out in meeting rooms, and you have to have a fluency, and you got to form an identity. And I can safely say I have no idea what this offense is at this point. I don't think anyone could, so they have to find their way, and it's unfortunate that we're doing this in the regular season. These are all things that had to be worked out by the time you got to this point. These games mean too much to kind of be using them as feelers, but I think that there's no other choice at this point. How much of the playbook have we not seen? How much are they holding back? We don't know, because it definitely didn't. It looked disjointed. It looked clunky. And those are some of the reports we were hearing coming out of the second half of training camp from the Minnesota joint practices on. These are kind of the things we're hearing, and we saw it manifest. You play how you practice, and unfortunately, it's disjointed at this point.
Let's hope there's a lot of the playbook we haven't seen yet. If not, it could be a really long football season. All right, Week 1 offensive explosive play percentage. That's defined as 10-plus rush yards, 20-plus pass yards. And the graph, Jaguars are 1. That's who we play. 15% of the plays. Vikings, 14.8. Packers, 3. Browns at 29th, 3.9%. Ahead of only the Bears, Commanders, and Panthers. Those are guys with first and second year quarterbacks. That is not where you want to be, and that is not what this offense was supposed to be.
It is the most expensive offense in the NFL. You cannot be in that subset of teams. You have to be fighting for that upper quartile. That's, to me, that's the bare minimum. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take a while to get there. And it's crazy when you watch a performance like that to think there's probably going to be a game at some point this season and they score over 30 points, and it's like you can't even imagine how they get there at this point, but it's going to have to evolve. They're going to have to stack things. They're going to have to get comfortable with concepts and figure out who they're going to be. And some things will change. You get Nick Chubb back, and if he's Nick Chubb, obviously that'll change a lot of things. But until the cavalry gets here and you get better offensive line play and all these things that come together, you got to piece it together. You have to figure out a way. You have to manufacture points by any means necessary. And, you need to be more explosive. You have too many playmakers on this team to not have explosive plays on a regular basis. If you look at the teams, there are several teams above you that don't have half the roster you do offensively. So you got to figure it out, and you have to do that now.
All right. Amari Cooper was asked today if the Browns offense can take a big jump in Week 2.
I definitely feel we could take a necessary jump. The Cowboys were a good team. They've been a good team for a while, like I said before. They just play better than us. I don't think it's more so about the play calling. When I looked at the film, we didn't do a good job executing. We didn't have the urgency necessary to be a successful offense. So, hopefully this week we'll pick it up. We got practice today. We're going to go out there and practice hard and grind. we got to do a couple things right this week, namely at the receiver room, winning our one-on-one matchups, and that's what we're looking to do.
And he went on to say they need to win them early to give an open target. Deshaun's got to get the ball out quick. That he held the ball too long.
Yeah, 3.2 something. That's too long. If you look at the top of the league, you want to be close to 2.5 seconds, and it might not seem like there's a huge discrepancy there, but that's the difference between getting pressured 40 times and taking 6 sacks. So it's imperative they get the ball out, that they find easy answers for him, and that he can identify those easy answers. That's why I think it's imperative that you're getting in and out of that huddle, so you get to the line, so you can get that pre-snap, photograph in your mind and have time to run motion as an indicator, whether it's man or zone. That way you can start to formulate what's going to happen post-snap, so you're not trying to figure it out all at once. I think it looked like it was just too much, and then when you factor in the pass rush, it became way too much. So it's baby steps. But for me, it's operationally get out of that huddle, see what you're seeing, get your indicators, and come up with a plan. Because those bullets are flying fast, and they got to get early separation, easy layups, and he has to see the layups and take them. And if you do that, I think you can get off to a decent start, and you can start to try to build. You can't just go from nothing to everything. So just find the easy stuff and take it.
All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I respect your opinion. If you think Baker Mayfield's a bust, then it's a bust. But what is going on right now, the numbers are not lying, especially last week. Deshaun Watson, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Baker Mayfield, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. We could agree to disagree, but you kind of don't look good on TV when you're attacking people that disagree with you.
I'm giving you my opinion. So you have an opinion that's different than my opinion. That's fine. I'm airing other people's opinions. I'm giving them the forum here. I'm not going to sit here and agree with you that Baker Mayfield, drafted number 1 overall, was the right move. It was an awful move. That's all. And again, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. He shouldn't have been the number 1 overall pick. And I have the hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20. Looking back at it, wasn't the right pick. That's all I'm saying.
And it's taken so long to develop for him to get to where he's at. So for the people to just tie him to the Browns' hip, as if the Browns moved on from him and he just became this franchise quarterback. Understand, if you were to poll everyone who watches the NFL and you were to say, name the 5 greatest offensive minds, I would bet to a man you would hear Sean McVay's name. Well, Baker got to spend time with Sean McVay and in meeting rooms and in practice, and McVay didn't see that in him, because if he did, you don't let him out of your building. You're substantially younger than Stafford. Like, he didn't see that. And if Sean McVay didn't see that, it's going to be hard for me to blame any other coach. I'm happy for Baker. I'm happy he landed in a place and he's now seeing success. I'm never going to be mad at that. I liked him as a person. It just didn't work out here. He was overdrafted and he wasn't developing. And I don't think he would have reached the levels he's reaching now had he not been humbled. And part of him being humbled was several teams moving on from him. So I think, for me, it's kind of pointless to argue about Baker and attach him to Cleveland in any way at this point.
And again, is he a bust as an NFL player? No. If he would have been drafted 20th, okay, that's fine. Drafted number 1, it's going to go down as not a good pick. That's just the way it is. Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I usually watch all of Kevin Stefanski's press conferences because I really enjoy the way that he handles himself. But watching the pregame for the upcoming Jaguars game, he seemed a little off. almost exhausted, and it's a culmination of everything with the week 1 result and these latest allegations against Deshaun. Additionally, I don't think you would find a Browns fanatic out there who considers himself more of an Andrew Berry fan than me. I believe in Andrew Berry, but I also believe that this all goes south. Deshaun's contract goes south. The result for the Browns goes south. That puts Andrew Berry on the hot seat, and that's an unfortunate reality. So don't really know what to feel right now. I feel like Kevin is emotionally struggling. I can't imagine what Andrew Berry is having to juggle right now, and truly, it's a sad state of affair. I empathize with Kevin Stefanski's apparent struggle in the press conference, and I can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes. So there's my 2 cents.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, it'll be interesting to see. I can't, I shouldn't say that. I don't think either Stefanski or Andrew Berry will necessarily lose their job if they decide to move on from Watson. I think they've earned that. I could be wrong. I could very well be wrong, but it would surprise me if either one of them got fired as a result of the Watson thing not working out. I think Kevin Stefanski's trying to figure out, what do I do with this offense? I think that's weighing most on his mind right now.
Well, he's dealt with so much. If you think all the stuff Stefanski's dealt with since he came in during COVID and everything that's transpired since then, he's had a lot of pressure on him before, but he's never had this. He's never had a lack of offensive identity. So that is probably weighing on him. They have to get this off the ground. They pushed all their chips in when they moved on from all the offensive coaches to placate to Watson's strengths, for this not to go well, for them not to have a solid plan. So, he's burning the midnight oil. Stefanski's not seeing his family. He's in there just grinding, trying to get this thing on the tracks. But I'm 100% with you, and I've been on record, and I've said it on this show. I think that if this thing with Watson burns and they have to eat all the money, I think Berry and Stefanski are still there. I think that everything they went through last season and persevered, I think that they've earned that leeway through ownership. I think ownership knows that as long as they keep those 2 guys, the ship will keep pointing north. And for a franchise that lacked direction for so long to finally have direction and then just turn away from it, I don't think Haslam's going to do that. And just like you said, I could be wrong. I could be misreading the situation. That's just the way I feel. I feel that Jimmy knows he has stability in those 2 in particular, and he's seen them do too many things with less for them just to move away. So it obviously we don't want to go that way. We want this thing to get back on the tracks, and we want to start winning games. There's too much money invested in this team to not win games and to not be successful. So it's all about compartmentalizing and taking it to Jacksonville and leaving Northern Florida 1-0 this week.
All right, so defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talked about the challenges of facing Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, honestly, we were prepared for him last year to be more limited than he was. He was still scrambling. He still had good mobility and things like that. So I don't know. I'm sure it affected him a little bit, but it wasn't as severe as we were thinking it might be going into that game. He's a rapidly maturing young quarterback, very, very talented, both with his legs and with his arm, makes quick decisions, and you can really see his transformation as a young player to now a veteran player in just getting the ball out quick and those kind of things, particularly first and second down, really good at ID and coverage and knowing where he's going with the ball. We were able to force him into mistakes in the first game. We had the 3 interceptions and a forced fumble and then a turnover on downs, and we're going to have to do the same. It's a great challenge for us.
And that's going to be a key. Lawrence, I was surprised. Lawrence has never won more than 8 games in a year, and his record's well below 500 as a starter. They gotta get after him.
Yeah, Lawrence, he touched on Lawrence doesn't get enough credit for this, and he was a little hobbled and was still able to do it. He's mobile. He's mobile. He's hard to bring down. He's not someone who's going to take it to the house on you, but he will move the chains. He will use his feet to move the chains. He's smart when he does it and doesn't take big hits. So yeah, he's a problem. And if you actually take away the first year with Urban Meyer, he's exactly a 500 quarterback. And they need him to be much more than that. They've paid him to be more than that, and they've surrounded him with tons of talent. But Schwartz is right. Like, he's able to identify easily. He's able to get through his reads and make the correct throw most of the time. They have offensive line issues, and so they're asking him to overcome a little bit in that manner. And it just so happens that lines up with the strength that we have of getting after the quarterback. So it's about forcing him into mistakes and doing exactly what you did the last time you faced off, and that is capitalizing on those mistakes and turning the ball over. But he won't hesitate to take shots with receivers. So the Browns secondary is going to have to be on alert.
So this from Dog Pound Daily, 4 depth pieces that need to step up with all the injuries for the Browns. Number 1, they go tight end Jordan Akins. David Njoku going to miss multiple weeks, it appears. Number 2, defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson. Number 3, linebacker Devin Bush. And number 4, safety Ronnie Hickman. And again, Juan Thornhill on IR, missing multiple weeks. Of all those, if somehow Akins can, they need something from their tight end.
Akins can give you stuff in the passing game, though. I feel good about that. I just don't know what you do when you go to run 11 personnel and you're asking him to help chip on either Josh Hines-Allen or Trevon Walker or Eric Armstead. They have really formidable pass rushers on the edge. So that does worry me. I don't know what you do in 11 personnel. But as far as him getting up the seams and being nice in the vertical game, Akins gives you a little bit there. And you even seen it last week. He was able to play decent when he got the opportunity. I just don't know what you do as far as using him in the running game as a blocker. It gets shady, and we've talked about this all offseason. I think they needed to get a more complete tight end as a backup and not just a pass-catching tight end. And, the whole plan was, David Njoku just can't get hurt. Well, seeing how long that lasted. So we're on the plan B. We'll see how plan B goes at tight end.
All right, before we go to break, just some news and notes. Jaguars placed really good cornerback Tyson Campbell on the injured list, hamstring injury. He's out a minimum of 4 weeks. So that is one of their top cover guys. So that's something the Browns will have to take advantage of.
He's their absolute best corner, and that is a big blow to them. Cornerback in particular is probably their weakest position, to be honest with you. They don't have much depth behind that. They got good safeties. They got good linebackers. They got a really good line. I like the pieces of their defense. They just haven't been able to put it together yet, and they have a new defensive coordinator. But it'll be interesting to see who they march out there and if the Browns are going to be able to take advantage of that.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I can't tell fans how to be fans and what their emotions should be in regards to the team, but the regular season is a marathon, not a sprint. I just don't like when fans are so extreme one way or the other. If we win a game, it doesn't mean we're the best team in the world. And if we lose a game, it doesn't mean we're the worst team in the world. I just want fans to ride the wave. It's a long season. We're going to have ups and downs. What matters is where you stand week 18. Did you win your division? Did you qualify for the playoffs? And as far as Watson goes, if he puts on a Browns helmet and goes out there and literally puts his life on the line for this team, for this city, for this fan base, I think he deserves at least a small amount of support and respect. Yes, he has to perform better, but let's just see if he can deliver for us in the coming weeks. And if he doesn't, they will bench him and move on. Okay, thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. KC fan is short for fanatic, and kind of that's why people react like they do. But it's particularly, I think, week one, a lot was expected, a lot of build-up, and that was as bad as of an opener as we've seen in a long time.
Well, Rico makes a good point there. It is a week-to-week league, and things can change so dramatically and so fast. And people overreact. And you overreact more to the first week because you have so much build-up going into it. But then it's going to start moving fast, And like for the teams, like by Monday when you go in, you watch the tape and you flip the script and you're on to the next game. Well, for fans, we don't get that because we have to stew on that loss a little longer to at least get into game week. So that's the reason we're having all this residual. He made a point there about Watson going out there and proving his toughness, and I think that's the one thing you can say he did in that game is he was taking shots and still getting up and still trying. But I need my quarterback to be smarter than he is tough. That's what I need. I need prove that you're smart and prove that you don't have to take those hits and come up with answers, And he's right. If you win, all of a sudden it's rose-colored glasses. Then you lose, and it's gloom and doom. And the fans react the way they react. I don't think there's anything you can do to change it at this point. That's just the way it's going to be. And he said it's a marathon, not a sprint. I choose to look at it as 17 individual sprints. And that you can't let losses bleed over. So the team has to wash this loss away. And unfortunately, for the fans, won't be able to do that until they see them win again.
So you wrote an article about some must-watch matchups, 4 of them. With this Browns-Jaguars game. You got number 1, Greg Newsome against Christian Kirk. Number 2, we've got Eric Armstead, Joel Bitonio, and Wyatt Teller. 3, we got Zadarius Smith and Anton Harrison. And number 4, Denzel Ward against Brian Thomas Jr. Take us through, a couple of those are wide receiver versus secondary. If you're the Browns and if you're Jim Schwartz, you got to like those matchups.
Let's hope. I'll say this. The Jacksonville wide receiver room is built pretty nice. They built them like a basketball team, and they have everything covered. They have a really good, diverse skill set, and they went out and got Gabe Davis to be like the power forward guy, and you go get Brian Thomas Jr. in the draft. And I got to say, watching his tape last week against Miami, you walk away super encouraged. He caught all 4 of his targets, 47 yards and a touchdown. But it wasn't just the stats, it was who he did it against. He won at Jalen Ramsey, and he did it with bravado. He was jawing at him, taking it to him, forced a first and goal type of pass interference on a 41-yard shot play where he got behind Ramsey. Brian Thomas is the real deal. But and that's your first week. Your second week, you draw Denzel Ward. Can Denzel set a tone? There's going to be no free lunches and really take, kind of shut the rookie out. It's going to be a tough thing to do. Lawrence will take his shots to him. But if you look at the other receiver in Christian Kirk, we didn't get to see Christian Kirk when we played last year. That was the first game that he had missed. He was coming off an 1,100-yard season in 22. He was on pace to do exactly that last year when he got hurt. He's a vertical slot threat. He'll match up against Newsome often, and that'll be a matchup I'm intrigued on because when Lawrence is in a tough bind, which he should be under duress against us, he looks to Kirk early and often. He didn't do it much last week, but it wasn't the same kind of game up front that it will be when you play the Browns. So those 2 matchups can dictate a lot of how successful and how much you can limit the Jacksonville passing game. One matchup that I'm very intrigued is Zadarius versus Anton Harrison. We know what's going to happen. You're playing Myles Garrett. Myles is matched up on Cam Robinson. He should dominate that matchup. Well, Anton Harrison, in my estimation, when you look at this Jacksonville team, is their best lineman by far. The Jags are probably going to try to roll the pocket to the right just to get out of Myles' path of destruction. Well, that puts you right into Z's path if he can win in his matchups against Anton Harrison. So there's a ton of good-on-good matchups in this game, and I'm just focused on a few. But Zadarius versus Anton Harrison will be a swing to how destructive his defensive line can be and how much pressure they can put on Trevor Lawrence, because we already know that Myles is going to do that from his side in his matchup. So it's about Z winning his matchup and just collapsing that pocket.
All right, before I let you go, Keys, when you look at this, how do the Browns get a much-needed win in Jacksonville?
it's give me 18 points. I'm not even on the bar so low right now. Give me 18 points. If you give me 18 points, I'm gonna think we have a chance to win this because I think the defense knows what's at stake. And they played better over the course of that game. After that second touchdown, they start putting it together, communicating better, and that's what no more miscommunication issues. Really just bear down and choke out this Jacksonville offense. The offense has to figure it out. Take the easy stuff when it's there and just limp along and just, for the love of God, end every possession and a kick, even if that's punts. We just got to try to work some sort of symbiotic relationship out where the offense gives you just enough and the defense kind of can still the win and get you back to Ohio, at least at 1-1 to face the Giants.
Well, again, you had 2 turnovers and a punt return for a touchdown. And if you've got an elite defense, those are 3 things that will kill an elite defense. Take care of the football and do just enough to win the football game is the recipe, I think. Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. You can read him in the Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, it's Daryl from Dixon. I just want to say, if we're going to continue to roll with Deshaun Watson, it's my opinion that we need to take him, put him on a pitch count, treat him like he's a rookie quarterback, simplify his reads, and really slow it down until he gets back up to speed. I really do believe that lack of playing has a great deal to do with his performance. I do believe there's still talent there, but he doesn't need to be throwing the ball 50 times a game. We're going to have to establish the run. The O-line is going to have to do better, but he can't be everything. We've got to really treat him like a rookie. You have to. He's just been away so long.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Browns on SI. Spencer, it's an interesting thing. You got to find what he does well in this offense, what you think he does well, and then play to it. I know it wasn't good. What do you do? I mean, you've got a lot sunk into this, and it isn't going to be, well, we're going to move off him, and I don't think it's going to be, well, we got to move off him in 2 weeks.
No, and the pitch count idea is like an interesting thought. I mean, fans are so used to seeing this team run the football and Nick Chubb sort of be the focal point, and to know they're going away from that, I think doesn't probably sit well with everybody. And so I understand. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, what does he do well? They need to identify that, and they need to play to his strengths to get him more comfortable. And that was supposed to be the whole point of bringing in Ken Dorsey. It was supposed to be, you bring him in, He knows how to placate to these types of quarterbacks. He's done it before with Cam Newton, with Josh Allen, and he's going to kind of bring this new wrinkle to the offense that unlocks his game. And I want to be clear, like, there's still time for that. I do think it's easy for fans to get caught up in week one, first football we've seen in months, and feel like it's the end-all be-all. So I'm willing to give him some time. This was the first time the offense was out there taking reps together really as a whole sum of their parts, because they didn't do it in the preseason. First time the offensive line had a chance to play together, and we know communication is so important with that group in particular, and they had some struggles. So I'm willing to give it some time to breathe here and let the offense kind of figure itself out as they get into this new system that they're running for Deshaun. But it was obviously not a great debut, and there are a lot of questions about, you know, if there's anything, if they can even pull anything out of this player that is Deshaun Watson, and if they can get him back to playing at a high level like we saw in Houston.
Again, I had no idea. I watched it, and it was like, well, now they're trying to run what they ran under center with the play action, and then it was like, well, here now it's more of a and I'm one of these guys that when people say they're multiple and they've said we're going to be multiple, I'm going, oh, multiple to me means we don't do anything really, really well, so we're going to try to do a bunch of stuff till we find out. And again, I know it's a personal bias, but anytime I hear somebody say we're multiple, I kind of go, ooh.
I love that point by you, Dave, because it's fair to feel like if you're saying you do a lot of things, you don't have really an identity of like one thing that you at least know you can bank on or do well when you really need it. And I do find that fascinating. And I think that was one of the more confusing things about this offense week one. We understood it was going to be a mix of Kevin Stefanski's ideas and Ken Dorsey's ideas, but it was so like convoluted. You didn't feel like there was any sort of like rhythm or rhyme or reason to why they were doing certain things in certain spots. And it was just very disjointed. And I wonder if that's throwing things off, if that's making it harder to adjust, because some guys, you know, you're doing stuff like you did last year and versus trying to do these new things that are better catered for Deshaun. I was perplexed by the fact that we saw during training camp a lot of motion from this offense. They've clearly put an emphasis on that. That was part of bringing Ken Dorsey in, was getting these, you know, advantageous situations to understand, like, are they playing man? Are they playing zone? How are we going to move guys around? And the Browns were one of the lowest teams, one of the lowest usage teams in terms of motion in week one across the NFL. So that, you know, that's problematic. I don't know where that kind of disappeared to, because they've sort of been showing that as a staple of this offense. And then it just wasn't there on Sunday. So that was perplexing to me. They are in a dilemma. And I do think a lot of this, I don't want to make this about, you know, they should have kept Joe Flacco, because I do think Joe Flacco had flaws, and we saw those kind of come to a head in the playoffs. But I do think one of the biggest indictments on Deshaun to this point is that Joe Flacco came in last year off the couch and ran Kevin Stefanski's offense the way that Kevin Stefanski's offense is meant to be run. And people have now seen him run that system effectively, and the fact that, you know, they're catering an offense to Deshaun's skill set, and it's not the same offense. The questions of like why these two got paired together come to mind. You know, why would you bring in a quarterback that can't run your system? And you saw Flacco do it at least competently. That it's you know, that's not going to go away. People are going to remember what that looked like. And meanwhile, you're bending over backwards for Deshaun, and it still isn't working. So again, we'll give it some time to see how it sort of plays out these next couple weeks. It was a 1-game sample size. I'm willing to understand that things can be different one week to another, but there are a lot more questions than answers at this point for what this new look offense is going to be. And I understand why it has fans a little bit nervous moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm a guy that poo-pooed the Flacco thing. When you put it in those terms, I can't argue with that. I really can't.
And to be clear, like, I'm not saying bring him back.
No.
Yeah.
No,
I understand why
when
there's issues there.
When you frame it as he ran this offense, and that's a valid point. People who watch the show know I'm like, yeah, I understand why they moved on from Joe Flacco, threw a ton of interceptions. Right. As you were talking through that, the most concerning thing that I saw, Deshaun Watson did not have the answers to what the defense was doing. That is a huge concern.
Yeah, and I also think to extend that a little bit, I think one of the biggest things, and it's been a problem, I think, the last couple of years with Deshaun, is he just looks right now like he's slow to process things. You know, the plays where he did have time, and you can go back and watch this if you have the All-22 or you have NFL Plus or whatever, you know, people out there watching, you can go back and you see a guy who, when somebody was coming open, he wouldn't see it. Like, he would have time in the pocket and he just wouldn't see the guys coming open at the right times. I don't think he's reading the defense well. And that's maybe the biggest problem for him moving forward, is like, if he can't get through that, if he can't read defenses, if he's slow to process, I don't know that he just fixes that in an instant, and if that's going to get better. And so that will continue to be a problem, and I think that will show itself out or play itself out here in the coming weeks, and we'll just have to see if it does or it doesn't. But yeah, like that's one of the bigger concerning things to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I meant by he didn't have the answers to what the defense was showing him, and that, I'm with you, that is definitely concerning. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, Browns on SI, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll hear from Jim Schwartz as well as Ken Dorsey, Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Cleveland Browns on SI. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talked with media today, was asked about rebounding from the 0-1 start.
I mean, it's a proud group, and I don't know if I'd say, like, get it turned around. I mean, it's one game, and I don't know if this stat still holds, but, and I can't even remember how long. I remember addressing the team one time. Maybe I was in Detroit, maybe I was in Philly, maybe Tennessee. I can't really remember. But at one time, teams that started 1-0 had a less chance to make the playoffs than the teams that started 0-1. And I couldn't wrap my arms around, like, why that was. And the best I could come up with is the teams that were 0-1 had to confront their problems, right? They were embarrassed by the performance. It's a big game, you know, and you have to go out, and it's an immediate self-check. You know, you get slapped, and hey, we got to go. The urgency to get it right, and maybe there's a tendency, if you start 1-0, maybe you dismiss or ignore some of those same problems just because of the result of the game.
Spencer, it's interesting. I was interested in hearing that. On some level, it makes sense. There's a lot of things they need to correct.
Yeah, no doubt. And I loved that line from Jim. It felt very Jim Schwartz first and foremost. He's definitely that type of guy that, you know, leans on some of those interesting sort of nuggets and the, you know, deeper thinking of guys when he's kind of speaking to the team, which I've always admired about him. But to his point, like, I think he's got something there. Like, how they respond out of this game is going to be the most telling thing of all. Like, if they come out and they've truly corrected their issues, we're going to see that play itself out in the field. And it's almost, you know, in a way, it's kind of nice to get the reminder early in the season that, like, hey, you got humbled, you got some things to work on, and you can start figuring those things out sooner than maybe other teams will. So I like where his head's at with that. I like what he has to say. But yeah, you're right. There is a lot to correct. I think from his standpoint, like, the defense was certainly not the problem on Sunday against the Cowboys. I think they had some moments where they played really well. We know, like, Denzel Ward dropped 2 interceptions. Maybe those are things that changed the game. Their one big error, of course, was the touchdown to Brandon Cooks, where Jim Schwartz called that I want to say he called it a technique issue more so than a communication issue on the back end of the defense. So he said it was something that was easy to fix. But I do think for the most part, that group tried to keep the team in the game as long as they could, considering that the offense was going 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out, throwing interceptions 3 and out. And so I felt, I didn't walk away feeling like there was a ton that went wrong in the defense and it's a disaster and all these different things. I did feel that way more about the offense. But what he says applies to both sides of the ball. I think the defense is the thing I'll trust to probably get things the most right. The offense, as we kind of talked about in this sort of first conversation together, is the one where, there's a lot of glaring issues. Can they sort through them in a short amount of time and correct them for week 2? I guess we'll see on Sunday.
So offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey talked about what he sees from the Jaguars defense on tape.
They do a great job of a combination of scheme and talent. I think they do a good job of knowing what they got and putting their guys in position to make plays. They're physical both up front and in the secondary. They got speed over the field. They've got pass rushers and linebackers that could go sideline to sideline, and then a physical group of corners with some very instinctual safeties that have range. So. They pose a lot of challenges, and obviously, schematically, they do a lot of good things as well.
When you look at their secondary, Spencer, Browns wide receivers have to win those battles. Their best cornerback is out. Cooper, Judy, they got to get some separation. They got to catch passes and turn them into 10, 15, 20-yard plays.
Yeah, you mentioned Tyson Campbell was the name I was going to bring up here. Obviously, him being out maybe creates an opportunity for them to do some things in the pass game, get some more guys free and open. The Jags defense is going to be good. I think that their pass rush in particular is probably one of the more slept on groups in the league. When you got Trayvon Walker and obviously Josh Hines Allen, I think his name is now, up front there. So they have some really talented guys. They're going to create some pressure. They're going to create some issues. But yeah, like week 1, you just didn't see it from this wide receiver group in terms of creating that separation, in terms of getting open downfield. You didn't really see the Browns take a lot of shots downfield. And I'm curious to see if they're able to do that a little bit more, especially with Campbell kind of being out of the mix now. It's a tall task. It's a tough test for this offense, but we know how important it is to not start the season 0-2 and the stats kind of work against you there in terms of making the playoffs. So I'm fascinated to see how this group responds, and hopefully we see a little bit more of the Ken Dorsey offense that's kind of been advertised by the Browns here over the offseason in week 2.
All right, this is from Dogs by Nature. 3 Jaguars who could wreck Cleveland's week 2. Number 1, they go wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., 21-year-old rookie from LSU, big-bodied receiver. Ran 4.3 at the combine. Number 2, you mentioned him, edge rusher Trayvon Walker. Cleveland's offensive tackle struggled last week. They already have to worry about Josh Hines Allen on the other side, but Walker is someone they can't ignore. And running back Tank Bigsby isn't a receiving threat like Etienne. He is a power back that can wear down a defense when you get him going. I get all of those. All of those concern me.
Yeah, I'm the most fascinated by Brian Thomas Jr. as well. He had the touchdown catch in week 1 against Miami. I think he had 4 catches for like 47 yards in the touchdown. And he's a guy that they're very high on. That's maybe one of the biggest differences with this Jaguars team from last year to this year is their wide receiver room looks a little bit different. You still got Christian Kirk there, but Gabe Davis comes in. Brian Thomas Jr. comes in as a rookie. And he's somebody that they're going to have to pay attention to. He's got that speed. Secondary is going to have to be on their P's and Q's in terms of kind of understanding where he is, and you can't have any miscommunications back there. And that's where I think too, the loss of Juan Thornhill comes into play here. I know Juan's had some struggles of his own at times, and he might have been part of the miscommunication or the technique issue, like I said, Chief Schwartz called it this past weekend. But just making sure everybody's on the same page, especially when you got a young guy in there like a Ronnie Hickman. Or even if he's stepping in at some point, because I imagine he will. The nice thing is, Rodney McLeod's probably the first man up there, and you feel pretty good about that. But you guys got to make sure you know where Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be at all times, because he's that take a top off a defense type player.
All right, before I let you go, keys to this one. What do the Browns need one? And, they come back and they get a win in Jacksonville. That's a tough place to go and win. You forget about the sting of week 1. What do they need to do to get a win in Jacksonville?
I honestly think one of the biggest things on the offensive side of the ball is just going to be is get the run game working effectively. I think we saw last week that they can run the football a little bit. Like they just had to. The problem for them became they had to get away from it because they fell behind by so much, and then they started passing a lot more. But I think if they can get the run game at least going at a steady, make it a steady presence in this game, I think it takes pressure off Deshaun Watson. I think it gets that offensive line really feeling good about themselves, and then they can kind of branch out and do some things for there. I know that the offense is based around Deshaun and throwing it, and it's not so much a run-based group. But if they can at least kind of establish that and get comfortable with it, I think it takes pressure off of everybody. On the defensive side, I'm just going to say finishing plays in terms of getting some takeaways. Like I said, Denzel Ward almost had 2 last week. If the offense is going to struggle, if they're going to have some issues, getting them extra possessions can be maybe a key that gets them going. So I want to see if this defense can get a turnover or 2. They did that against Trevor Lawrence last year. They forced 3 picks against him. So I think there's an opportunity there if the pass rush can get home to create some issues, get him a little rattled, and then, give the offense the ball back and give them more opportunities to kind of work out some of the kinks that they're dealing with.
Spencer German, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Of course, always appreciate the conversation, Dave. Thank you.
Spencer German, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fan. He also writes for Cleveland Browns on SI. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.